Now let's move on to two important concepts for environmental policy and environmental analysis: the concept of institution and the concept of governance. Institution. The classic definition of Douglas North is: institutions are the humanly devised constraints that structure political, economic, and social interaction. Institutions consist of both informal constraints, it means sanctions, customs, traditions, taboos, codes of conduct, and formal rules, formalized in constitutions, law, and property rights. Hajum Shang and Peter Evans enlarged a bit the meaning of institutions with their definition that says that institutions are systematic patterns of shared expectations, taken for granted assumptions, accepted norms, and routines of interaction that have robust effect on shaping the motivations and behavior of social actors, of interconnected social actors. What is the main difference between the two definitions is that Douglas North definitions is focused on constraints, and Chang and Evans to focus attention also in the enabling role that institutions have in the achievement of certain goals that require supra-individual coordination, and also institutions as constitutive of interests and worldview of actors, are not just enabling or constraining, but they are also constitutive. And as all institutions have a symbolic dimension, and therefore they spread certain values and worldviews into the people who live under them, we begin to internalize the values embodied in those institutions. George Hodgson also modifies a bit North's definition, saying that institutions are durable systems of established and embedded social rules that structure social interactions. For Hodgson, institutions are social rule systems. Those rules are embodied in institutions such as language, money, law, systems of weights and measures, traffic conventions, red lights. All of these are institutions. Regarding the organizations, North says that if institutions are the rules of the game, organizations and their entrepreneurs are the players. And Hodgson defined an organization as a special type of institution that involves just criteria to establish its boundaries and to distinguish the members from non-members, and a principle of sovereignty concerning who is in charge, and finally, a chain of command delineating responsibilities. For environmental policy, the institutional dimension is very important. It was necessary to promote huge, important, breathtaking institutional changes to create a new role for the state to protect the environment. So, environmental policy is built upon institutional pillars that represent huge institutional changes that were established from the 60s, 70s on. And not all institutions favor environmental policy. We can say that regarding the environment, institutions are at the same time responsible for structuring collective action to address these problems, and responsible for causing problems also. So we have tensions and contradictions between institutions. Because it involves so many changes, and because it's rather recent policy realm, it is very important to analyze regulations on environmental protection from a historical perspective. Now let's move on to the definition of governance. Governance is a term and a concept that entered recently in the language of social sciences and political science, and sometimes it's considered a synonym for government, but it is not. The word has been used, the word governance, to try to interpret and grasp and order the drastic changes in the political world that occurred from the 70s on. So, as the old way of doing things was not functioning anymore, we needed new ways in order to cope with all those changes, those crises, the shrinking of the state, the reform of the state, the democratization, decentralization. And after the New York Towers, we had also other huge changes in the ways of government. The first thing that we can say about governance is that it is defined by an opposition. You have a state-centric old governance, old way of doing things, and a society-centric new governance. And the society-centric perspective places the focus on the ability of society to govern itself. It's evident that we don't have such an autonomous situation in any country of the world. That scholars stated that governance means a change, the change in the nature of the meaning of government. So you have government and governance as two poles in a continuum of different possible ways of governing and coordinating the policy-making process. This opposition may be summarized and illustrated with the various definitions of governance. I will read some of them for you. You have a first definition: governance being the traditions and institutions by which authority in a country is exercised for the common good. The processes and institutions, both formal and informal, that guide and restrain the collective activities in a group. A third definition: governance being the tools, strategies, and relationships used by governments to help govern. A fourth definition: the reflexive self-organization of independent actors involved in complex relations of reciprocal interdependence, with such self-organization being based on continuing dialogue and resource sharing to develop mutually beneficial joint projects and to manage the contradictions and dilemmas inevitably involved in such situations. There is a common argument to all those scholars that work for this or that definition, is that governance is not a new theory on how societies are governed, but it's simply a new way to organize political and policy analysis, as the governance lenses allow for a better understanding of what is worthy to study. So governance is a very popular and a very slippery term also. You may read texts where the term is accompanied with many adjectives. For instance, global governance, that refers to attempts to devise regulatory policies in response to global problems, such as terrorism, poverty, global warming. You also will find the term corporate governance, that refers to the institutionalized interaction among many players, including shareholders, management, boards of directors, employees, customers, financial institutions, regulators, and the community at large, involved in the process of directing and controlling private firms. You will find also the term multi-level governance, that refers to a system of continuous negotiation among nested governments at the local, regional, national, and international levels. And you will find also the term new governance, that has been a buzzword in public sector reform, inspired by the new public management. So the governance literature contains many constellations of definitions that expand the possibilities of application of the notion of governance. the crucial insight for governance is that no single actor has the knowledge, resources, and capacities to govern alone in our current complex and fragmented societies. So, to govern nowadays, it is crucial to interact. Interact is needed in order to exchange or pool the ideas, resources, and competences that are required for the production of desirable outcomes. This is considered the soul of the concept of governance.